being able to have a partner where I could grow and be understood and who was trying to support me emotionally and physically, then not having to feel like, every time I do something, I'm in trouble about this or that, right? Because he had a very much more uh, trusting perspective, right? My ex-husband just came from too violent of a home.
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. I'd like to welcome you all to our podcast today. Today, you will be listening to Stephanie Cerins' story. Stephanie is an author. She recently wrote a book called Healing My Heart After a Loss, Affirmations that Encourage Me to Feel and Heal My Grief. And we will be hearing about her story, her journey of grief and gratitude in that process, and also learning a little bit more about what got her to write this book. So, welcome, Stephanie, to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Kendra. I feel real grateful to have a chance to share my story on your podcast. Thank you
Uh,
so much for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. And we have a 2 hour difference. You're 2 hours earlier than me. If you'd like to share a little bit of where it is you live with the listeners, and I'm going to ask you a little more about your life as well so they get to know you.
Sure. Yes, I'm blessed to live on Vancouver Island. So it's a very beautiful spot in Canada, and I think it's one of the best spots. We drove quite across Canada in 2017, and I thought, yeah, I like Vancouver Island best.
Now,
And
how when you take a ferry then to go inland? Yes. How
yes,
long does it take? How long does it take to take
an
a ferry
hour
to
and
go?
about an hour and a half.
Oh, it is a long ferry ride.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you have, I mean, you could sit at the ferry terminal for 3 hours if you don't make a reservation, though.
Oh, wow. So you really do have to prepare just like going on a flight. Like really like just preparing as if you're
Uh,
going on a flight, reserve your ferry ride if you're going to go
yeah,
into on
if you
inland.
really, if you got a real appointment, right
Yes.
then.
Now, from there, can you also do you have to go into Canada, or do you have access also to Seattle, to Washington State as well?
Yes, we have access to. We have a walk-on ferry that goes from the island to Seattle, and then we have a drive-on ferry that goes from the island to Port Angeles in Washington.
Okay.
So we have two different ways to get there.
But wonderful. Good. So it's good. You have the best of all worlds, in an island, but also access to two different countries within an
Yeah, and it's good because I was born in the States, and so then I fell in love with Robert, and then I moved to Canada.
move to.
So
Okay, so let's go into there. So where in the States did you grow up?
in Western Washington.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so you were still there. Okay, so
Yeah,
tell us about your childhood, since that is part of your story too, into then writing this book. So let's
yeah.
go into that. Where in Western Washington did you grow up, and tell us about your upbringing?
I was just raised by regular middle class parents, and we had my dad worked at a pulp mill, so he had a regular job where he worked shift work, and uh, I had a stay at home mom, and so just regular and kind of life. And we were lucky enough that I got to have some horses. My parents moved to a farm when I was 9, and I believed I was Flora Ingalls Wilder reincarnated because I loved that story so much. And ever since I was in my grade 3, I wanted to be a writer. And so um, the how I just was I had a very pretty blessed childhood. And then when I was in my 15th year, I woke up one morning and then my dad's car was like parked on the little road that came to my house off the main road. And so um, I went running out there. Why is my dad's car out there? Right. And I didn't even say anything. Like my mom was still in bed and my brother was in bed, and I just go running out there because I'm always the first one up in the house at that time. Um, and then he was just laying there on the ground, and I went running back in the house, and a neighbor or someone had already been there, and he came while I was there again, and he had called the ambulance somehow. He saw my dad or something, right?
Oh,
I
so
don't
the
know.
neighbor had already reached the ambulance before you
That
had seen your dad.
had reached my dad's car, and then seen
Oh.
him outside because he kind of wrecked the car, but he died from alcoholism. He
Mm.
coughed so hard he ripped his esophagus inside. It's called a Mallory-Weiss tear, and you bleed to death inside yourself real fast. Our esophagus has so much blood vessels, which I didn't know till
So
then.
is it so okay, so because of the amount of he was intoxicated in that moment and then cough, or because of his body already having had so much alcohol that then
Yes,
when he coughed that oh, okay. So that kind of eruption on the esophagus was caused because of what his body had already endured from alcohol in the years.
yes, it can. Having so much alcohol can actually erode your esophagus if you drink too much. And he had a lot of indigestion, right? Probably from that, and
Oh, reflux, all those kind of things that also then create all that irritation in the esophagus.
that's right.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
yeah, because it was in
Wow.
1980, right? I was only 15, so it was a long time ago. Right? We didn't have. My mom said your dad would have lived if they would have had that little purple pill back then. I thought, well, maybe. Who knows?
Now, so your brother was younger than you, or is he younger or
Yeah,
older
he's
than you?
like 8 years younger. I
Oh,
was
he
like
was
his
much.
second mom, so
Yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
have a difference in age similar to my younger siblings and I. So you see this, you come in, he had he already passed away? Or was it
He
that he
was
went to the
just
hospital?
No, he was just in the process. He wasn't. I don't think he was quite passed away because the ambulance picked him up, and then he passed in the ambulance.
Okay. So, and that moment then you have then growing up then with your mom and your brother, you go through this. What was the process of supporting your grief, like either from your mom, your family around? Was there that support in your grief journey? Was it something that was talked about or not? What was that
Right.
like?
No, we had a very normal family where we didn't talk about anything.
We
No.
had a very normal family.
And it was much too shameful in 1980 to go to a counselor, right? Because then that meant you were
You were
crazy,
crazy, right.
right?
So
So
right, it's so
no,
true, so
so
much taboo around mental health and support around mental health and emotional health in this case with grief as well, that is not just, so,
yeah.
so then what tools then did you have or not have during that, time then as a 15-year-old going through this, not being able to talk about what you had just witnessed at the same time as what you had felt. Um, what was it? And what time of year was it, by the way? Was it in the summer? Was it at school? Like, was it school time? I'm trying to
Yeah, yeah, it
envision it
was
in
on. Yeah, I was getting ready to go to school. It was actually Earth Day in 1980, and
okay.
so I was
April, right?
getting ready.
April
Yeah, April
21st.
20. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
20th, 21st.
so I was just yeah. So it was a nice day. I just went running out, and it's interesting because I couldn't even have really talked about it I mean, probably right away, but my brain blocked it out. Like, I didn't remember finding my dad till after, because of course, I used the time tested methods of alcohol and drugs and self abuse to cope with my pain because I didn't
Mhm.
have any other way to
Well,
cope with
that's
it.
also how you had seen your dad probably also handle whatever else emotionally, right? He'd gone through too, right? So it's like
Yeah.
if there was nothing else, yeah, you didn't know any different. And at school then, there was no like school counselor either,
Oh,
at
no.
all?
They didn't have. In the 80s, we didn't really have school counselors, not like now.
Not
You
like
might
yeah.
have a counselor where you would go to talk about your schooling, what classes
Mhm.
you wanted to take, but not about your emotional stuff.
Uh, so then how was it for you then, share like, in school then with your friends, did you ever then talk about that at school with your friends or to nobody? You didn't talk about
Yeah,
any
no, I
to anybody?
no, because every time we talked about it or I talked about it, I would just cry, and I didn't want to feel that pain,
Mm,
right? Like even to my mom, it was just in the last few years, 10 years probably before she died, that we could even talk about my dad without crying, because she would lay in bed every night and still pine for my father, right? Like even though she
mm,
had a new husband, right, and she still
mm.
couldn't get
Oh, so
over
she
my
did so she remarried how many years after your dad
oh
passed away?
The first time she remarried, it was just like 1 year after. My mom
Mhm.
they'd x-rayed my mom for acne in the 50s, so for 6 months, 2 or 3 times a week, and they baked her in these x-rays. So my mom was quite ill from that experience. My whole
Oh.
life, my mom was ill. She had terrible rheumatoid arthritis. And so,
So wow, so that was yeah, so a lot. So you grew up basically with two ill parents because I'll call two ill parents because you're and then your dad passing, and then just not too long ago, then your mom. Um, so let's talk then about what shifted then, because here you're sharing then about all these tools, quote unquote, of coping, which were really more ways of avoiding the coping, right?
yeah.
Of trying to not feel all this pain. What
Uh-huh.
changed then? Because here you are writing a book now about all these affirmations. So what changed from the age of 15 to now in that journey?
Well, at about 24, then I quit drinking and I started reading. I mean, I read some books before about positive thinking and stuff,
Mhm.
but not a lot. And then when I got into AA and I got sober, um, then that's when I started doing more reading and learned about Louise Hay and the affirmations and using those on myself because I knew I was so messed up that like I didn't have children or anything because I knew I was a real mess and I needed to like
Mm.
re-raise myself, right? That's how I kind of felt. So I was
I
just going to learn to parent myself.
First, correct.
Right.
And that's such a good phrase you're using there. It's like we we hear we're giving to others sometimes in general, and this is something for any of us to even really reflect whether we've gone through something as hard as you have or not, is that fact that we also have to nurture and parent that little child in us as well, and we sometimes neglect it, right? So the fact that you had gone through something so hard, you learned then to reparent yourself first. Then at the age of 24 is when this journey started for you of learning to reparent as well as learn to love yourself and all these affirmations. And for those not familiar with Lewis Hay and her books, and her methodology, would you mind just sharing a little bit about how it is she uses these affirmations
Oh,
in terms of healing our body?
sure. Louise Hay has been in the healing realm and an author and a book publisher, probably since the 70s or 80s, I think she started. And she was really helpful in the AIDS crisis down in San Francisco and helping people to reach out, or I mean, reach inside themselves to and reassure themselves and give affirmations. Because if we can change our perceptions of ourselves, we can change our lives.
Mm,
And mostly we've been raised by parents that were, you know, I mean, my husband's parents were in World War II. They didn't
mm,
have any, like seriously, his mom was getting bombs dropped near her and had to run to
mm.
bomb shelters, right, when she was a little kid,
Priorities
right?
were completely different. That was survival priorities. That's like, yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
and so, when you go through that, you're, you know, his parents didn't have time to give him emotional support in some ways because of that, right? And mine did, we all I'm just trying to say we all come from kind of broken parents because of just society, and we didn't really. I mean, it was always just suck it up, buttercup.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I mean, really, wallowing in sad emotions really isn't going to help you anyway. So you might as well suck it up, buttercup. But you
Mm.
do have to deal with those emotions sometimes if you want to have a more happy life, right?
Ri Right,
And
and so which affirmations that Lewis had, if you recall, and, like, which ones when you started that journey of reading into her books, of that self-healing? I know I've looked anytime I have, like, "Oh, I have lower back pain. Let me see what affirmation I have to look to and see what emotional aspect is related to my lower back pain," and so then I'm like,
oh
"Oh, it has
yeah,
to do with emotional or financial support," or something like that. I'm just like, "Hey, let me," so then I say this affirmation. So, which ones were some of those that you started using during that time? And I know also, I'm sure that, and you mentioned this with being in the AA as well, the amount of spiritual and emotional awakening that goes through even going through those kind of journeys, right? And the support you get even there as well. So, yeah, sorry, I asked too many at once.
that's all
Too many
right.
questions at once.
Yeah, the mostly the affirmations I used to just reassured myself, like I am lovable, I am kind, I am worthy. They were just really short affirmations than what Louise Hay. Um, they were just like little one-liners, right?
Mhm.
I am worthy of love. I think before I act or speak. That was one that really helped me um,
Mhm.
to be able to just have a more happier life because then I wouldn't say things that I had to feel bad about later, right? If I thought
Mhm.
and just think things through and just affirmations that like to befriend death because I know it's coming for me. That's what I was so upset about. It's like, what? I'm gonna go through all this shit. I'm gonna die.
Mhm.
Like, oh my god! Like that seems like pointless. Why did I even come here then? It's like,
So
all
to be
right,
able to befriend it after
yeah.
having been your enemy, quote unquote, and for so many people in general, we fear it so much, yet it's like the one thing we actually know is certain in our life is death, right? So to know that that is certain and to know that the pain and the grief that will come from losing those around us that will die, as well as our own mortality, is just a fact of life. How was that then, that evolution of Stephanie Cerins going into then befriending it from how was that process?
Well, it was. It took a long time. It wasn't overnight. That's for sure. It just um, the because I had no framework, and then it was just this shock, and it well, like I had my great grandma die, but that's in order. When someone's really old and then they die,
Mhm.
that's in order. But when someone dies, my dad was only 39, right? So
Oh,
that
so
was
yeah.
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 So he
Yeah.
sobered up a lot of his friends, right? He said, "Oh God, Jim died of it. Oh, well, we better straighten up."
Mm.
Right? So he was able to help his friends in that, and
So it meant, okay, that right there, I just got chills in that moment because that right now how you said that he was able to help his friends, and that realization for them of him passing so young from something that they themselves were also suffering from, and even for yourself, that even though you did go to a through a period of life of that, because again that's all you knew, for you to also know that you couldn't live that way and also sober up, but sober up, Buttercup. Maybe you should say not suck it up, Buttercup. Now it's sober up, Buttercup.
yeah,
You had to
that's a
sober
good
up,
one.
Buttercup.
Yeah.
So that is yeah, that is quite a big learning there, that his death didn't go in vain
Right. No,
and happen in vain. Hmm.
no, he really it really affected his friends because he was the life of the party and he would always lend a helping hand and he was good natured like that.
Mm.
So, um, yeah,
So
a
that
lot
that
of a lot of people really did missed him. He had a packed house, right? Because he was so young. The younger you are, the bigger the funeral, right?
Mm. Wow, that's true because, well, there's also more people that are still alive to see you go, because sometimes when we're
Yeah.
older, all our friends might have already passed already too. So
Yeah.
then, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say Robert's dad just passed at 96 in October, the end of October and the 30th, and there wasn't really any, he was like, he says,
Who's Robert?
it's
Am I like, I don't know who Robert,
my,
who is?
my husband's father.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
Robert's dad. I thought you said
Robert's
Robert's,
dad.
and I thought you said like a last name, and I'm like, who's Robert's dad? Just dad. I thought you said so your husband's dad. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow, that's a that's a long, yeah, long life. But yeah, none of his friends were at his, but all the kids, grandkids, or any of things like that.
yeah.
Now, let's go then into how it is you ended up then becoming a writer, and then there's other things you do too. We were talking before we started recording. You do Reiki, reflexology. So, how did you get into that line of work? And I also want to know how you met Robert. So, do you decide which order?
Okay.
Which one came first, Robert or reflexology and Reiki, and then go in that direction?
All right. Well, reflexology started when I was at home with my mom because she had terrible rheumatoid arthritis, and my mom's had tried everything to get better. She slept under a pyramid, like, and she would adjust the pyramid to be perfectly at north. Like, truly, my mom tried
Wait,
everything.
wait, wait. Okay, wait. I need to understand this visually. What a pyramid, slept under a pyramid. Explain to me what that means.
So there was like a tube pyramid,
Yes.
so it's
Yes.
just like a frame of a pyramid,
Okay.
but big, like it went over the whole queen size bed.
Oh, kind of
This,
like a teepee over her bed to some extent,
yeah,
that type of shape. Over. Okay.
but a pyramid with four
Mm-hmm.
sided, and
Okay.
then on the top it had a copper top to like draw energy to it, or some. I'm not sure of the psychology of it all, or the methodology, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want to call it, um, and then she slept with the bed up, like so her blood would get down from her legs better, and like my mom tried everything, right? She slept on Nikken magnets. She took every vitamin, right? And so, but her body just never got any better,
Mm. So
unfortunately.
you grew up seeing her then doing all these different methods to try to support her health in that process, and then that kind of sparked your curiosity into all these different methods of healing.
Yeah, the reflexologist that she went to, Dick Thurston, was a wonderful man, and he saw I had an interest in it, and so he trained me so I could help her. And then he was just he was kind of looked like Humpty Dumpty. He had suspenders and blue pants always, and he was bald and a little portly, and but he just was so kind, and whenever he would do the reflexology, he would just be so peaceful looking, and the energy around him, I just loved it. And so, and then he would always give me a little mini treatment, like for a few minutes, when I would go along with my mom, and I just loved it. And I thought, oh my gosh. So, and my mom hardly paid him anything because he just charged by donation. So she would give
Oh
him like
wow.
$5 or $10, and so I
What
carry
a
on that.
generous, what a kind mind. Oh, so you carry on that same method as of payment as well?
Yes, to honor him because he taught me.
Wow. So
Because
you
I
do it by whatever the person wants to give you?
Yep, I just say, it's for in trade.
Mhm.
It's by barter, whatever, whatever money you can afford to pay by donation.
So for you, it's really more about, the service that you are providing to someone in that process. That is really what is also bringing you joy, is that energy exchange in some way or another. And if it's not financial that they're giving you, then like you said, barter. So what's some of the things that people have bartered for your services? Like just example, just curious, what type of
Um, well, usually so it's just, well, I have a friend where we do a trade. Like she gets a massage. Like today's her massage day if it doesn't start to snow before too long. and
and
then and then every other week we trade. And then but mostly it's just for cash or trades. If I want to trade, or then I'll trade with them.
that
But
that
usually, it's usually on a sliding scale of cash, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
would take a trade if, a friend
Mhm.
of mine, I do have a friend where she's making me a sweater and I give her massages because she's a good
Perfect.
knitter. So
Now, when you do that massage and reflexology, do you do Reiki in the same session or is it a separate session that you do that?
no, yes, I do the Reiki and the reflexology simultaneously,
Mhm.
so that I'm doing the energy body and the physical body as well.
Oh, that's so perfect. Now, with that combination we just said, the energy body and the physical body, let's go into those spiritual components of that grief journey. What were your beliefs when your dad passed away, when your dad died, of about death and what happens after? And did that change, or did that also play a part in your grief journey? Those spiritual beliefs about whatever happens after we die.
No, I think we weren't a very religious family. We mostly believed in beer. But we did go to church a little bit. Like I went to church with the neighbor girls, and my dad's mother was very dogmatically Christian, right? But that's probably why we didn't go because she was very dogmatic about it,
Mhm,
right? So that's kind of to be kind of harsh. And so, no, I didn't really know. You just die and go to heaven, right? Like I
mhm.
don't know.
But you
We
didn't
used
even,
to,
but what is heaven? Like you would, yeah, that
right?
understanding of it was not. So then what has shifted, or what are your feelings about it now in terms of your own in this, and you don't have to answer by the way, but I'm the one that's usually curious if that's played a part and you also befriending grief and befriending the idea of death as well, if that if the shifting of what you see about death has made a difference, you know what I mean, in
Yeah,
your belief.
yeah, it totally does. Because like when my mom just passed away like 3 years ago, it was for me a totally peaceful, wonderful situation to see, because my mom's body was broken and really disheveled, and like if I would have had that body, I might let it go like a long time before that. It's like
Mm-hmm.
she was good at dealing with physical discomfort sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
my mom. Like I couldn't stand to suffer as long as my mom did, really. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have wanted that life. My mom had a stroke a few years before, like she could hardly walk, like, and she couldn't even walk good before that. And so my view of death was from, I wanted to die with my dad. I wanted to. Why did you take me with you? You left me here with mom. Oh my god, right? And so, because I was daddy's girl, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, but now my view of death is very beautiful and stunning. I did a distance healing on my mom right before she passed, and as we were kind of hovering above the hospital bed. That's the only. It was just feelings, not really. I couldn't see me and my mom. I could just see what was in front of us, kind of thing. But it was like the energy of me and my mom hovering over the hospital bed, and my mom was like the most giant raisin you ever seen in the bed. And I said, "Gosh, mom, that body's pretty trash looking," you know. And she's like, "Oh, no, and yeah, it is, And then we just hung out there a little bit longer, and then the next thing, we were going down this path together, and there was lights at the. It was light, bright golden light, and we were going toward the light, and then the light all kind of individuated, like it was all these beings of light, right? They were very just, they didn't have like faces and arms, but you just got this feeling of that they were beings of light. And then I felt like I passed my mom's hand to my dad, and then that was then it was pretty much the meditation immediately like ended after that. And it usually, when my healing meditations go about 45 minutes, but with my mom, when I came out of the meditation, it was like, wow, that was only 20 minutes. Oh, I ripped my mom off. I better try again to get back in there. But really, that was just. And then I found out that my that right during that time my mom got a big dose of morphine, so maybe that's what cut off the. But why we didn't go farther, I don't really know why. But it just, I felt real peaceful about death since then. I mean, before that, I felt okay about it, and I had befriended it, and maybe that's why. But it was just like I never had a meditation experience like that before, right?
Yeah, it was
So
transcendental. It was just something that you got to see just a different perspective and of what could be this spiritual or energetic realm, whatever we want to call that, whatever continues. Um that is so beautiful that you were able to have that healing process before her passing and actually be probably part of that, of course, journey as well as you were doing that, yeah, long distance session with her as you were doing that. That's beautiful. Now, tell us more then of the tools. So we've talked about then affirmations being part of the tools that you used in your grief journey. Um, Having gone through AA, being part of this tool, the tools that you did start implementing then at the age of 24, as well, of this reconciliation with yourself as well as with the things that had happened in your life. What other tools have you used, and how did then writing come into play in this journey, and then the trajectory of now having written your book? Oh, we
um,
still have to get to how you met Robert too. So
that's right. Well, I was gonna go back to that because he's kind of a big part of it.
yes.
Because this is my third marriage, and the other two obviously didn't work out. And but in the other two marriages, it's like I just got littler and littler and littler till
Mm,
the marriage ended, right? For whatever reason, different
mm,
reasons. But for the first husband, I just didn't really like him. And then the second husband, I really loved him, but he dealt with his emotional stuff by slapping me around, right? So I
mm,
couldn't put up with that forever. And
mm,
so when I met Robert, um, I was much healthier, and my second ex husband was a very good person, and I learned lots. I read tons and really grew in that relationship, even though it was a rather stressful relationship.
mm.
I had never had an orgasm before that man either, and he fixed me on there, so that was very good.
Well, because that's also all related to emotions, right? So the fact
All
that,
related.
right? So all related. So in that is a key. You sharing that is not a TMI kind of moment, it is actually, no, just so that the audience is how much our emotions and all this grief play a part in all aspects of our life. So the fact that maybe at that with him was in that moment of maybe your body already going through a shift in changing emotionally, as well, that then you were able to actually experience pleasure, not maybe feel guilty about actually experiencing, because who knows what other reasons you might have not before of,
Right.
not felt that maybe you deserved to feel anything. And if you had completely blocked feelings of even grief or of this, or then that can also block all these other emotions of joy and pleasure as well.
Exactly, because it was in that marriage that when I remembered that I had all that, finding
Hmm.
my father, because I had just blocked it out, and I didn't even know you could do that, right? But then when I was with in that marriage, that's when, with all the book reading and all the talking that Jeffrey and I did and stuff, he was very good with emotional problems except his own, right?
Hmm.
And so,
So,
and
but it was part of, that what you were talking about, in general. Like, this is actually a good segue of seeing even how many other grief journeys we go through and learnings that in that relationship, even though he was broken, it actually, in certain things of his own life, that ended up helping you grow in that process. So it's again that grief and gratitude and growth, that goes in even in relationships. So you
yeah,
outgrew that relationship per se, that a
yeah.
relationship ended.
And then in 2000, when that relationship ended, that's when I made a commitment in my heart to cheer up the planet. What did I want to do now that I got done with this crappy marriage and good and stressful and
Hmm.
crappy? And and I went to a battered woman's shelter and all that, right? And so I got all started over. And then 4 years later, I met Robert, and um, in this relationship, I've just got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like Robert, my husband's 6'7", and he's an artist,
Oh my goodness. Six
and
foot seven.
and
Did
he's
he play
very
basketball? That's like the typical question for someone that's tall. Are you a basketball player?
yeah, he wasn't, but everybody wanted him to be. That's for sure.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so because he's quite flamboyant, and so I've just gotten to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like it's okay now. Like if in my last marriage, if I attracted attention to myself, that was a very bad thing, and I would get in very big trouble. But in this, like I wouldn't even make eye contact with people by the end of that relationship, and all kind of things, right? And now in this relationship, I get to talk to everybody, and I get to attract as much attention to myself as I want.
You
And
have
like,
permission. You get permission to do, yeah.
right. And no matter what, I'm still the straight one, right? Like, I guess Robert's even more like he's going to get more attention no matter what. Because when you're 6'7", how tall are you? Like when you walk in a room, they notice, right?
Yes.
So
He already, yeah, makes a present, has a presence. So you have to kind of grow yourself in order to even be at least 6 foot tall next to a 6'7".
yeah,
So then in that, then you in this relationship, then you've grown, and in this process, then because you said you wanted to write since you were a little girl. So
that's
where
right.
where was writing in this whole journey, and did you journal in these other, even while you were going through these other relationships? Did journaling ever play a part in your process of grief and in these marriages as well?
I did journal for a while before my first marriage. I mean, between my first marriage and my second marriage in AA. Then my second husband used my journals against me, so I never journaled again because he found them and read them, right? And then I was in trouble. And then, but what I have since 2012, I started a blog called Happiness Heals. And so I've written blogs of affirmations. Almost, I might have missed 5 months where I didn't write anything, right, in all them years, but I think it's under 10 months out of all them years. It's 11 years now that my blog's been going. And so, and that's just, I just wrote affirmations. In 2012, I started writing affirmations for people. I had a couple of friends that were in a real big mess, and every day I wrote them affirmations to try to cheer them up. You know, sometimes it worked better than others, but and then because um, we need, I think for us to be happy, we need to change our perspectives about ourselves because we're ever evolving spiritual beings in these earthly meat suits. And if you really, what you think about, I mean, I was a housekeeper in New Mexico and I was like not happy with American politics. And I was like, God, get me out of here. I don't want to pay taxes for all this stuff. I want to go somewhere else and pay taxes. Maybe we won't fight all the time, right? Because like I didn't believe in hitting, right? My ex-husband, I never hit him back. I promised I would never hit him back because hitting's wrong. Even if you're hitting back, it's still wrong. It's still hurting. And I mean, he was bigger and stronger than me, so it would be pointless anyway. But I pushed him off of me a couple times, but not aggressing back. And then, because I was going to fix him, he gave me an orgasm. I wanted to fix him to stop hitting me. I loved him. He could fix everything. It's possible. And so there was lots of good things that I liked about him. And he healed
Mhm.
my lifelong problem. I was 29 before I had an orgasm, right? I was really wanting that. I was going through them, and if you can't help me have one, get out of here.
so so then this goes through, then with him, then you were writing, then you stopped journaling because of the fear of then being seen.
Right.
Then you write then this blog in 2012, start writing affirmations for others as well, helping others in that journey. Then were you already doing Reiki and reflexology, or in that time,
Yeah.
in that, okay, so all
Yeah.
this healing and helping others had started around then 2012
Oh,
or
well,
before that?
I've been doing reflexology
With your mom, I know when she was
Yeah,
yeah.
off and on, not like professionally or just for friends, pretty much my whole life,
Mhm, mhm.
And then, and then and then the Reiki came in later. First it was reflexology and then the
And then the
Reiki.
Reiki, okay.
And then, but mostly since I met Robert in 2004 in Silver City, New Mexico, where I was living.
Mhm,
And so I just had went to a dance, and then he ended up. I was dancing with just a bunch of girlfriends, right? So you don't get drunk, right? You have to dance. So I mean, you get too drunk just drinking, and I was quite good at that still, right? Because once I quit drinking, then I started, and then now I don't drink anymore since
mhm.
2014. But and never with quite the zealousness that I did when I was young, but um, still too much, uh, and so with just being able to have a partner where I could grow and be understood and who was trying to support me emotionally and physically, then not having to feel like, every time I do something, I'm in trouble about this or that, right? Because he had a very much more uh, trusting perspective, right? My ex husband
Mhm.
just came from too violent of a home, right? And so that he was too scared. And so to, I could have friends and it was important for me to pick a man who had friends because if someone don't have friends, a man or a woman, if you're dating, if they don't have friends, then they might not be that friendly,
Mm, mm.
right? And so
Oh, wow. So 2004 then with Robert, 2012 then the blog, and then how did then the blog turn into now the book?
I just had always wanted to write, and so I started. Here's my first book, "Healing My
Yes.
Heart After Domestic Abuse."
Oh, okay. So you have that one too. Okay.
Yeah, and so then my other one, it'll be the same format, right? There'll be a short affirmation and then a photo, I mean, a
Hmm.
sketch, and then a longer affirmation. And I like the longer affirmations because, I mean, we ad nauseum in our head berate ourselves. Oh, I'm not pretty enough. Oh, I'm too fat. Oh, I'm not, whatever. There was lots, I used to berate myself ad nauseum, right?
Hmm.
And instead, to try to reprogram myself so that I say nice things to myself and be supportive. Like I could do that, or like when I do my workout, it's like, oh, I'm strong in between every repetition, right? Strong, I'm strong, right?
Yes.
And to build myself up, and because each because our thoughts, I mean, in AA, they said, well, if anybody talked to me like I talk to myself, I would kill him. Someone said
Hmm.
once, and I
Hmm.
thought, oh, well, that makes sense,
Hmm.
you know.
Yes, like we are so not kind. Yeah, like we give so much grace to others, yet we don't give enough grace to ourselves and things and how we speak to us ourselves. So in the new book then that you just released then in November
Hmm.
of 2021,
Hmm.
um again, and I'm going to repeat the title, Healing My Heart After a Loss, Affirmations that Encourage Me to Feel and Heal My Grief. And again, this is Stephanie Cerins that I'm talking to, and the author. And then you have an illustrator in that book. Would you mind sharing one of the affirmations in the book with the listeners?
Oh, let's see how could
I actually, because I
I
see the
think
one that's on Amazon. If you don't, on the Amazon little clip, there's one a sample of it.
right.
I could read that
Sure.
one, or if you want to read yourself one.
If you want to, whichever. If you want to read it, you can just read that one, or I can just go to the um to Word, right, and
Yes,
then read
yes,
one.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was
Do one.
hoping. I have my books are in the mail coming. I was hoping they would be here, but they're going to be here in about 3 days. So I was like,
Yay!
dang.
So
So
then when as you're looking for that then, so the best ways for people so you can get them on Amazon and there's Kindle edition, paperback, as
yeah.
well as then your website as well where you have your blog. Is that also where they're able to find the book as well? Can they purchase it from your website too?
That was another goal that I had to get done before today, but it's going to
It's
be
okay.
done soon. But
It's okay if
just
not
on
Amazon,
Amazon
Amazon.
right
And
now.
then while you're looking, her blog is happinessheals.wordpress.com. Again, Stephanie Cerins, who we're speaking to. And the reason I'm saying the name several times, my dad, who's my biggest listener, the one that's probably listened to every single one of my episodes the most, he's like, Kendra, can you please repeat the person's name again at the end of the podcast and say their last name a little more? I'm like, Dad, I will do all my best to remember to do that as I'm doing this. So, so thank
Oh,
you, Daddy,
that's
for the
great.
advice. So if people hear me saying that at the end a little more and acknowledging the full name of who I'm speaking to, it's because one of my biggest fans, my dad, has recommended I do that. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah, tell me when you have found one.
All right, I think that uh, there we go. So let's see.
And I'm closing.
So
I'm
how
going to
about
close my eyes. I'm going to close
all
my
right.
eyes as I listen.
So how about expressing my grief? So expressing my grief through conversations with trusted friends heals my heart. My grief spills forth from my heart through my words, causing my soul to connect to source energy, enabling me to cope with my sorrow. Remembering that even though my loved one has transformed back to golden light, we are one through our heart's connection. And then,
Mm.
so that was the short
It's
part.
so
And
beautiful.
then,
So beautiful. I love that imagery of the golden light. And plus, that just brought me back to when you were talking about you doing that meditation, like, with your mom and you seeing that golden light and it kind of refracting into several individual lights that you mentioned before. So I love that visual.
oh, thank you. And then, so that's the short affirmation. And then the other side is the full page affirmation. And so this is the affirmation 4 from the book. Each time I allow myself to share my grief with trusted friends, my heart gets lighter. My friends comfort me with soothing words that remind me I am loved. It is up to me to keep sharing my grief so that my heart receives the solace it needs to heal. Grief is best shared with friends who love me wholeheartedly. My life is blessed to have caring friends that want what is best for me. As I am able to speak about the loss of my loved one, my face is soon covered with tears once again. My friends give me the gift of listening so that I am able to hear my sorrow. The attention my friends offer me is mending my soul. My grief is eased by the care of my friends. As my tears start to flow, my friends step up to give me space, hugs, chocolate, or a warm blanket, and I feel safe. I choose to visualize my beloved as golden light, which brings to my heart a sense of peace. It is a blessing to me to know that his body is what has dissolved, so that the golden light of his spirit is free to roam the heavens. We are still connected by our gift of love. I am a comforted child of universal love, and universal love knows I am connected to my loved one through my heart. All right, he liked it.
Yeah, that was my guest, my nephew dog who's visiting. It's like it's like so you just,
Oh.
yeah, he gave approval. I was so like concentrated, and then right as you ended, Poncho is his name, just barked
Oh,
here.
cute.
Oh, wow, that it was just so beautiful. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank
It's such
you.
a beautiful way of just wrapping all this conversation up so that people can just connect again, not only to your book, but also just to you, because those words that you wrote just really do give comfort and know, people know that when they're reading these affirmations, it does come from someone who's already been through something like that they might have been, and therefore um you can relate, you can relate to that pain. And if they've helped you in your healing journey, I'm sure that they will play a big part in your readers as well as they read your book. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Stephanie, is there
Yeah.
anything I did not ask in this journey, or any question that I asked that we might have gone in all these different loops that we didn't get to answer?
No, I think we pretty much have covered it all. I just feel very blessed that you gave me the opportunity. This is my second podcast, and the
Mhm.
first one about my book. A friend of mine, she has a podcast, "Living Your Juiciest Life," and I've had such a messy life, and now I
And
like
now
my
you're
life,
juicy.
and
Now it's juicy.
yeah, and so, but that's what inspired me because she did that. I thought, now that my book's done, I should reach out to grief podcasters, right? And maybe that can help me to become the next Louise Hay because she passed away,
There.
right? So we need a new affirmation person in the world.
Yes. No, and it's beautiful, and we all connect, I always say this with in general, like there's a lot of, for example, grief podcasts, there's a lot of different authors, right, as well. But there is never enough, because everyone will relate or connect to a different, you know, either podcast or a different author or book, because it has to be something that resonates with the person that's either reading, if it's a book, or the person that's listening. So the more that there's out there, the more tools that are out there, the better. And so that's wonderful that you now have this affirmations book. And again, you can find Healing My Heart After Loss, affirmations that encourage me to feel and heal my grief, on Amazon. And Stephanie Cerins, it was a pleasure having you on. And thank you so much for sharing your juicy life, because we did hear that was probably some juicy conversation. I don't think that the word orgasm has ever been in my podcast till today. So
Well, death and orgasm don't always go together, right? Unless if
there
you
we go.
died having an orgasm, that'd be
There we
pretty
go.
good.
Then that would also be that that person had a very juicy life as they lived. But thank you so much for sharing.
Thank
And
you. And
I, yes.
if you're interested, I'd love to offer you a free copy of my book. If you'd like a copy of my real book, I'll send you one,
Uh,
a paperback, if you send me
oh,
your address.
oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. That's so kind of you. Thank you. And
Thank
thanks again to
you.
the listeners for tuning in. And again, make sure to check the show notes so that you can go and access the website links as well. Thank you once again.
All right, and I'll make sure you have the book link if I didn't give it to you already.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.